What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Back to our regular time. This is another episode of This Brother Talks. First of all, I just like to thank anybody that gets on here, check it out, participate, comment, and just stay engaged with it. I just want to say appreciate you guys for checking it out. Today, it's gonna be basically an all NBA show. I'm just going to strictly talk about the NBA because we're starting to get down to the nitty gritty of the NBA with playoffs looming, the new format, based off everything 7 through 10 is like in a play-in. So, these last few games is really going to matter. So we're going to get into stuff. We're going to get into it real quick. And the first thing we're going to start out with, not going to waste any time. We're going to get into who's under the most pressure to win. And when I say win, I mean win an NBA championship. You got a lot of guys that, could be in the runnings to win. There's a lot of teams that could be in it, from Brooklyn to LA. If LeBron and AD are healthy, they're the reigning champs from last year. Then you have Philadelphia 76ers, the Milwaukee Bucks, just teams in general. But for the most part, TC, you need his hat. Yeah, man, I done had his hat a couple years, but and then the shirt is minding my own black business. Yes, sir. And the shirt too. I feel you, bro. But we're gonna go into it. And so these are my mind that I look at and say who needs it more. KD, LeBron, Kawhi, PG-13, Antetokounmpo. And whenever I look at those names, and I can eliminate a few of them here and there, I can I get going. Sabrina, I do mind my business, so shut your mouth. But whenever I go and look at these names, I look at KD and I say KD, he's coming off almost like a catastrophic injury. The Achilles, he's been out. He's been having a hamstring, and just coming off that injury, I really don't expect a whole lot from. I know KD's going to be KD, but just coming off the injury, that's a hard injury to come back from. And then you got LeBron James. LeBron is, father time is starting to creep in. You're starting to see little injuries here and there. None from last year, but the year before, he had the groin. This year it's a high ankle sprain, and he's been out for a minute now. But father time is creeping in. So, he could be, up under the most pressure. Then you got Kawhi, who's won championships with the Spurs. He's won championships with, won a championship with the Toronto Raptors. Then you got Paul George, who's everybody talk about being a star and this, that, and the third. He had promise whenever he first came in. He had a catastrophic injury. And so, last year he didn't fare too well in the Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. And then you had Antetokounmpo. Sabrina. Oh, my bad. Yeah, TC don't mind his business. You're right. But then you have Antetokounmpo. He's been the MVP, the last couple of years, then get to the playoffs. That style of play doesn't work. I don't necessarily, blame him completely, because his has a lot to do with coaching or whatever, because of the way they play. But in my opinion, who's under the most pressure? It will be Kawhi Leonard, in my personal opinion. Simply because Paul George is not the leader or the man. That's not his team in with the Clippers. Antetokounmpo has some years, in my opinion, it's too early just to be putting pressure on this man. Said, even though he's been MVP, but they throw that around all the time. And LeBron has won championships. But Father Time is not in his favor. And KD, he's starting to get a little older, but he's proven that he can win also. Some people might not like the way he won, but he won, plain and simple. But the reason why I say Kawhi Leonard is simply because of this. And nobody really wants to believe this or take a look at this. Kawhi Leonard won championships with San Antonio and Toronto. And first year, he wasn't the guy. And matter of fact, I don't even know the second time that he was the guy with the Spurs because they had a hell of a team. Now, he was the man in Toronto. Don't get me wrong about that. He went there late. He was traded late. So all he had to do was finish season. Toronto just needed a guy who could finish. And don't get me wrong, I'm not taking away from it, but Kawhi has proven he can win in systems. And I said this many of times. San Antonio had a system. Nick Nurse had a system in with Toronto. So it was move the ball, play team-oriented basketball. Boom, boom, boom. He's been good at that. Now, the reason why I say all the pressure's on him is because now he's playing in a way that he is the guy. The ball goes through him. It's more like a one-on-one system, like I'll go and then Paul George go. But ultimately, he's the one. Yes, his stats look good. Stats look great. But when it's all said and done, he hasn't proven that he can win being the guy playing in a system where everything goes through him. Everything goes through him. Not the Spurs system where we're going to move the ball. We're going to have, Tim Duncan score here, Manu Ginobili score here, Kawhi, you do this, somebody else do that. It's not that anymore. He's in a system where he is the guy. Now, this is stuff that he asked for. Then, along with all of that, he went to LA. He left Brand Jordan and went to New Balance, and then they started all these commercials. He had, saying that the city was his. He had the crown on his keychain and this, that, and the third. And that was throwing shots at LeBron. He didn't have to say his name, but he was throwing shots at LeBron. He went to the Clippers because LeBron was at the Lakers. He didn't want to play against LeBron. So, me personally, the pressure's on him because if he can't win being the guy, and a lot of people, and the reason why Paul George is not in this right here, because we don't hear people saying Paul George is the best in the world. I've heard it plenty of times about Kawhi Leonard. The last couple of years, they was talking about he surpassed KD. He was better than LeBron. And so that's where I feel like he's up under the most pressure, because if he does it, then we got to start criticizing him and quit allowing the ways that he has. Because when he was in San Antonio, he played bad. It was, the Spurs didn't play the Spurs way. That's what it was. And now we got to start looking at this guy and quit, sugarcoating stuff for him. If LeBron has a bad game, we go in on LeBron. KD have a bad game, we go in on KD. But for some particular reason, nobody does that to Kawhi. And, he's through these subliminal shots at everybody and all that good stuff. So now it's time for him to put up or shut up. Let's see, you being Batman and you got your Robin. They got a good team. And to get bounced the way they did last year, because Paul George not the only one that played bad in the Western Conference Finals last year. He had a terrible game set. Yeah, he played good other games, but superstars rise in those occasions. Game 7, everything's on the line. Now you got more to prove than KD, LeBron, and Antetokounmpo. Now, the reason why Antetokounmpo will be second in line for me, because one, he's been the reigning MVP. And after a while, he just signed this big contract in Milwaukee. So after a while, he's going to be pressed to deliver. And the only problem with him is he has KD in the East now. Now, if Brooklyn stays healthy and Brooklyn play the way they're supposed to play, buddy's going to be in trouble about getting a championship. TC, I have to agree with you because he stays on the radar. He's not on social media talking. He ain't got to be on social media talking to me. I could care less what you do on social media. I watch his commercials. I watch the way he play. I see all of that stuff, but I agree with you. That's how he flies up under the radar. He's a regular guy. And don't get me wrong, he's a great basketball player. But at the end of the day, he got to be held accountable too, because people saying he's the best in the world. I remember I heard Max Kellerman say, but that's, Max says all types of crazy stuff. But I've heard a lot of people, just praise Kawhi Leonard. And I haven't been one of those ones because I felt like the system, he always benefited from the system. Paul George benefited from systems. And so now with both of them got to produce, but it's more on Kawhi because that is his team. And at the end of the day, if this is his team, he got to step up. He really got to step up. And so, that's just my opinion on who's under more pressure. Everybody else could think differently, but I just think Kawhi, because I hear people talk about him all the time and they give him a pass. And yeah, he won one the last about 2 years ago in Toronto. But if I'm not mistaken, before KD went down with the Achilles injury, they were getting their butts handed to him pretty much. So if KD's healthy, I do believe Golden State would have beat him, and he wouldn't have that third championship. KD would have a third championship. So, and I'm not putting asterisks beside anything because injuries is what happened in the game. But when he was playing, Kawhi looked very average, and he couldn't stop Kevin Durant. So, at the end of the day, I think the pressure's on him. And so we're going to keep moving right along. And our next topic is going to be, like I said, we're staying in the NBA. And not only, we got a lot of stuff going on with players having pressure, but we got a bunch of key injuries, like key injuries to top name players, all of that type of stuff. It's just interesting. Yeah, TC, I forgot about that too. Klay Thompson got hurt. Because maybe if he plays, it still might be a different series too, But I agree. Klay got hurt then too. But, we're going to move on to injuries since, you said Klay got hurt. We got a bunch of injuries, to players that's playing right now that could have a significant impact on, their teams, going deep into the playoffs, making a good playoff push and possibly, win the championship. I mean, we'll start with Anthony Davis. I think he's been soft as pudding anyway. I mean, and a lot of people might disagree with him. They say he's like one of the top 5, but, talents in the NBA. But I seen one great consistent year out of Anthony Davis. That was last year. No injuries, none of that stuff. This year he's been injury prone. Now he has a calf and an Achilles, and they saying that it might be 2 weeks before he come back. We don't know. We're going to see what's going to happen. And yes, these guys work out. They do all this type of stuff, but how rusty will he be when he come back? And how far down will the Lakers be whenever he come back? Then we're going to stay with the Lakers. We got LeBron James. He has an ankle injury, a high ankle sprain. And I know high ankle sprains could be, a little tricky from time to time. But I kind of question some of these injuries because they've been out for a while. And they say LeBron's not going to be back for 3 weeks. And that's give or take. And how far will the Lakers be down when that time comes? I mean, it might be good for LeBron to sit out a little bit longer because – he's older. The rest would do him some good. But, with him coming back, how can, I think LeBron will fit in, just fine. But at the end of the day, how much rust will take over? Because, yeah, he's human because you can get rusty. Time off can't hurt you. So we'll see what happened with him. And then we got James Harden playing with the Brooklyn Nets. He's been the catalyst to this team. He's been, me personally, while KD was out, he's been the best player in the NBA. He's been dealing with a hamstring tightness. They're saying it's going to be a few days ago, saying 10 days. So he got about, 4 to 5 days, and we'll see how he comes back. That's going to play a big part in Brooklyn because he is the point guard. He's the guy that's going to keep everything flowing. Because if we have to depend on Kyrie to be the point guard, then the Brooklyn Nets are going to be in a whole lot of trouble. They're going to be in a whole heap of trouble. And so then we have Kyrie. Kyrie's injury is not anything physical. I think it's more mental with him. He gets in his own way. He takes off whenever he wants to take off. And I just don't know if that's a good remedy for winning a championship. At any given time, this guy could say, I don't want to play, and he takes off. It could be, it might be game 7 of the NBA Finals, and he might decide that he wants to take off. And for whatever reason, so, and I think that, and I was being a little sarcastic with that because, it's not really injury, but I just know that he got thrown out of the game the other night against the Lakers, him and Dennis Schroeder. Then, he's not going to be in their next game coming up. And what does that say about Kyrie? Like it's always something with him. The guy, you never know when he's going to show up, when he's going to play. And I just don't think that's a good remedy. You got people out here in this world that's making up excuses for him. That's basically saying that's something he need to take care of. It's okay for him. No, that's not right, because you got other guys that do the exact same thing. They go to work. They do what they're supposed to do, because basketball, we look at it as, as fun and games and all that good stuff. It's a competitive sport. But at the end of the day, these guys get paid to do that. This is their job. And you try to just say you're going to take off just to take off at your job and see what happens. And I just think that's going to hurt the Nets, in my personal opinion. Can they get past that if KD and James are healthy? Yes. But having a Kyrie Irving, a full healthy Kyrie Irving for that third option, I think it would be better for him. But if moving forward, you don't know where he's going to be, if he's going to play, if his mental is going to be right. I mean, I felt like they should have traded him whenever at the trade deadline. You just never know with him. Then you have KD. He had the hamstring strain, and he's been limited in his activity. I think he played 25 minutes the other night against the Lakers. He looks good because, him coming off any injury, as long as, his game is not predicated off athleticism or none of that stuff. I mean, he shoots, he comes off screens. That's stuff you can practice on all day, every day. So that stuff is not going to hurt him. But that hamstring is something tricky. And I think it's just coming from, him not playing the last year and being out with that Achilles injury. I think that has a lot to do with it. And, they may get that under control. Hopefully he comes back well, because, I want to see them at full strength. I want to see how good him, James, and Kyrie play together, because that could be one of the most explosive offenses that you've ever seen before. Plain and simple. It's no other discussion behind it. They could be the best one, plain and simple. And so those are some of the key injuries that we have right now with teams that are being competitive. And, you have Antetokounmpo. He's been out here and there, with Milwaukee. I mean, it's just give or take. Some of these guys just rest, and stuff like that. Some injuries that are not, as significant, but has a partner, with some role players like Patrick Beverly. He's out with, injuries. And then you got Serge Ibaka out that, could possibly hurt the Clippers. Good enough. They're pretty deep. They have a pretty decent bench or whatever. They might be able to come back from that, from, them picking up Rondo and, so, that could help. So, those are some of the key injuries that I've been looking at. And I think that they're going to play a significant part, because if the Lakers don't have LeBron and AD at full strength, they will not repeat. They can't have one and not the other. And they can't have one and the other be at 50%. They can't do that. Both of them have to be full strength, in my personal opinion, especially if Brooklyn is 100% full steam ahead with everybody healthy, and they just so happen to make it to the NBA Finals on the Eastern side, because it's not a given. You can go into the final, go into the playoffs and pick up some steam, and anything can happen. So it's not a given that Brooklyn is going to make it to the finals. It's not a given that they're going to win the NBA championship. It's a lot of stuff that a lot of hurdles and stuff that they have to go through. So we're going to see what's going to happen. But like if KD's not 100%, yes, James and Kyrie, those guys, they kept Brooklyn afloat, nice wins here and there. But I mean, we've seen what James have done in the playoffs. He kind of get missing sometimes. And I just don't see them with that team being able to beat some of the other teams by themselves. Just those two. I think if they played against Philly, Philly might beat them if KD's not healthy. But if KD's healthy, I think Philly doesn't stand a chance. It's that simple to me. They don't stand a chance, and I feel bad for them because this was a year that they got a new coach, they had a new system. Embiid is playing at MVP caliber, and now if KD's healthy, you got to run up on a monster like that. So, we'll see what happened with these injuries. We'll go back and we'll look back at them again. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is the remaining schedule, the NBA schedule, remaining NBA schedule. If you look at it now, the most games a team has now is 21 games. You got some with 21, 19, and 18, games. So anywhere between 18 and 21 games is where everyone is at. And down this stretch, this could be really key because when you look at the standings, anything can happen with some of these standings or whatever. So if you look at, I'm going to go and look at the standings because I have the strength of schedule, but I haven't looked at the standings for, each one. So if you go and you look at conferences, anywhere between 4 and 8, 9, and 10. Well, I would say anywhere between 4 and 8. There's 7.5 games out of first, 8 games out of first, 8.5. Anything can happen in these last games where things could get mixed up. Right now, Charlotte is in the playoffs and don't have to play in the play-in game, and you would have Boston, New York, Indiana, Chicago, those teams in those play-in games. And then if you look at the West, I mean, it's so close to like the Lakers, Denver, the Lakers, Portland, Dallas, Memphis. They're all 6, 7, 9, 10 games from each other. So, well, not from each other, from first. So their games they're 2 games, 3 games, 4 games, 5 games apart. That could make a big, big difference. Somebody go on a 5-game losing streak. Let's use the Lakers, for example. They go on a 5-game losing streak and Portland goes on a 5-game winning streak. The Lakers could drop down to 10 or something like that, So, we don't know what will happen over the last few games. And then if you look at, the strength of schedule, I mean, this is what it is. The strength of schedule goes, the Rockets has the toughest schedule. Then the Spurs, Blazers, Raptors, Knicks, Suns, Lakers at 7, Timberwolves at 8, Bulls at 9, Nets at 10. Some of these teams really, it doesn't matter. So the Rockets is out of it. The Spurs are still in the hunt, so this could play a big part in them. The Trailblazers are 6 in the West, and they got the 3rd toughest schedule in the NBA. The Raptors, it doesn't matter to them. I don't see them making the playoffs. They're not going to get a strong enough push. Then you got the Knicks, who's in the 8th seed. They got the 5th strongest schedule left, and this could play real big against them. We're playing a tough schedule, and like at first, the Knicks were playing really good. Everybody felt like, oh, we got new life in New York, and they kind of faltering off down the stretch. The Suns at 6, they're 2nd in the West, but they still have a tough schedule, and this West is so close together. I mean, they're only 2.5 games behind Utah. They're only 1.5 game ahead of the Clippers. So anything can happen with the Suns. And then we have the Lakers, who are at the 5th seed, and I just used them for an example. They got the 7th toughest schedule to finish out the rest of the year, and that's without LeBron and that's without AD. So that plays a big part with them also. Then you have the Timberwolves, who they don't stand a chance. They like one of the worst teams in the NBA right now. And then you have the Bulls with the 9th toughest schedule. They're right there in that 9th and 10th seed in the East. So this could play real big in their favor. Well, I ain't gonna say it's in their favor, but they're the 9th toughest schedule, so it could work out against them. And then we have the Nets, which the Nets are they're tied with the 76ers for first in the East. So, they're at the 10th toughest schedule. But if, you have KD who's coming in, playing 25, and they're going to ramp up his minutes slowly but surely. Then you got James, he comes back healthy, and Kyrie comes back mentally strong. Then the Nets, I feel like they can weather this storm, and they can stay one of the top 4 teams in the East. And so, strength of schedule, is sometimes overrated, but going down the stretch and the way things are, I feel like, it could play a big part in deciding the season with some of the injuries and stuff we have. And it could break some of these teams like the Spurs and the Blazers to me, and also the Knicks. But I think the Suns will be fine. The Lakers, if they could just stay above water and hold on until LeBron and AD comes back, I think if they stay around 4 and 5, they'll be all right. But if they drop down and have to have that play-in game, I think the play-in tournament, I think that will be kind of tough on them just mentally. LeBron would have never been in a situation like that where he's fighting to play into the playoffs. Normally he's one of the top seeds or whatever. So, I mean, we'll see what happens there. And it's just real tricky. We got the most we have is 21 games. So we're going to see what's going to happen between these 18 and 21 games. And, a lot of them could happen pretty soon. We got quite a few games going on now, like the Knicks and the Lakers are playing against each other right now. And both of those are, 5 and 7 with strength of schedule. The 76ers and the Mavs are playing, but that's not. The Spurs, they're big on the Magic, which that helps them out. The Bulls play the Grizzlies. It's saying the Nets and Timberwolves are postponed. I got to get information on that. But, I mean, that plays a big part in everything. So we're going to see what's going to happen. The Suns play against the Rockets. The Rockets got the toughest schedule, but the Sun is 6. I think that should, help them out or whatever. So we'll see what happens. The Knicks and the Lakers is real big for them going forward. Like this could be one of those games that could put you over the top. Like it could give you the especially the Lakers who've been playing without LeBron and AD. They go on the road and they beat the Knicks. They just beat the Nets, and then they could go on a little run. This could really help them out. It could really help them out. So we're gonna see what's gonna happen with the remaining strength of schedule next week. This could change. We could see some changing in the playoff field and stuff like that. All right, so we're gonna move along. Like I said, we're staying in the NBA, and the next thing we're gonna talk about is KD says championships not his motivation. And I thought about that, and I thought about it. Because if you're not playing for championships, then what's the purpose of you playing? Because ultimately, in order for you to be the best, people measure you off championships. Yes, he has 2, but, with the all-time greats, Bill Russell has 11. Michael Jordan has 6. LeBron has 4 right now. Kobe has 5. Magic has 5. Kareem, did Kareem have 6? Kareem has 6, if I'm not mistaken. 5 or 6, 1 or 2. But those guys are measured off how many rings and stuff they won. Not only just their greatness, but how many rings and stuff they won. And then at the end of the day, that's what they were. John Davis. The game was postponed after the fatal shooting in Minnesota. Okay, that has a lot to do with. I mean that city is under chaos right now because of that shooting. I appreciate that, John. I wasn't for sure why. I hadn't done my homework on it, but I appreciate you checking it out and let me know. But I thought about that with KD, and I was saying, how can championships not be your motivation whenever you've already won 2 and you should want to win more? Because at the end of the day, they're going to measure you versus LeBron. LeBron has 4. You have 2. And so that should be something that you want. But then I sat back and I thought about it a little while longer, and I was like, you know what? That's not crazy at all. Because the biggest thing that he said was he wanted to work on his craft and work on his greatness. So the way I'm thinking that he's thinking, and the way that if I made that comment, I thought about if I made that comment, it would be, I would look at it this way. It takes a whole lot of pressure off of you. If you're not going out saying, oh, my ultimate goal is to win a championship. I'm going to win a championship because I got to win a championship. I guess he's taking a lot of pressure off himself, just saying every night, just let me go out here and be great. And if I go out here and be great and I improve all the time, every time I step on the floor, the championship will be the ultimate goal. But that's not something that I'm just putting my mind to it because, anything can happen in the season. But if I go out there and be great and I stay great, then the championship it's in sight. So for him to approach it that way, I thought it was kind of crazy at first, but thinking about it, it makes a whole lot of sense. I think it takes a whole lot of pressure off him going out there saying that I'm just going to work on my craft. And I've heard him say that before, like he just want to get better each game and work on his craft and be better and all that good stuff. And I just feel like that's what it does. TC said, "Yep, it's all moral victories to me." I mean, I'm not gonna say he has any moral victories. I just think that he plays reverse psychology on himself, and this is me playing as devil advocate and just trying to look into his brain or just pick apart what he's saying, and I just analyze it as let me take pressure off myself and say I'm going to work on my game. I'm going to work on my greatness. But if you're great, you want the pressure, you embrace it. Yes, TC, I agree with you on that. But at the same time, he didn't say he didn't want the pressure. I just said he played reverse psychology on himself. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to take the pressure off of myself just by having a different mentality. And, the championships, he did say he wants to win championship, but he knows. I agree with what you're saying. It is a different era. It's a different era of superstars. And the way he approaches it and the way, others approach it is totally different. That's what makes this generation so different from past generations. I agree with you. And like I said, I'm just trying to be the one to say, okay, well, let me take a step back and look at it because I'm trying to get my mentality out of it because I'm old school. I'm old school. I mean, we talked about Russ last week and Russ was talking about, he's a champion when he walked on the court because, he made it and he's a champion in life and all that good stuff. So the mentality is different. So I looked at it differently from what he was saying. I just feel like he said, I want to win, but if I don't win, it ain't no biggie. It hurts me that I don't. But at the same time, as long as I'm great and I go out there and I be great and I show my signs of greatness, a championship will fall in place. That's the way I'm looking at it. And a lot of people might look at it differently. I just see it as him looking at it as maybe the glass half full, instead of glass half empty, it just depends on which way you look at it. And, I completely understand what he's saying whenever he says that, he want to work on his greatness and his craft and all that good stuff, because, I've talked to the guy and he said, some of those same things to me, not talking about championships, but always working on his craft and working on his game and how he wanted to be great and all that type of stuff. But I know, we can look at it. We can look at it from so many different angles. I'm just saying that I feel like I'm playing devil's advocate and I'm saying that that's the way he's looking at it. He's taking pressure off himself. And like TC, I put this back up again. You said different era of superstars. Some people don't handle pressure like everybody else. The old saying, pressure busts pipes. And if some guys go out there and put that type of pressure on him, and maybe Oklahoma City taught him about this type of pressure. Because when he was in Oklahoma City, he had a lot of pressure on him. A whole lot of pressure. You had a whole state that was depending on you to bring something great to the city of Oklahoma City. Not just the Oklahoma City and Edmond area. I'm talking about the whole state wanted you to bring something great to them. And then you had family that wanted you to bring something great. They wanted you to do something before LeBron. They wanted you to be the face of the NBA. And then, he might have learned from Oklahoma City. Let me take this pressure off of me and not worry about, because they went to the finals in 2011. They could have won it, but I don't think they would have won it simply because, and that's a whole story for a whole totally different day on my theory on why they didn't win it. But yeah, but and at the end of the day, that's the way I think that he's approaching it now. I had so much pressure on me in Oklahoma City. Everybody felt like I should win. I should be, the most dominant. I should take all the shots. I should be the alpha male and all that good stuff. That's why the guy left Oklahoma City and went to Golden State. People don't, and I'm talking about him now because I'm about to go on something totally different. People didn't pay attention to why KD left Oklahoma City. Everybody felt like he was disrespecting players. He did Oklahoma City dirty. He did this and he went the easy route. If you look at why he left, this guy made this statement here. He said he was in Oklahoma City. He played with players that were athletic and all of that good stuff. But he never played with shooters. He was the only one that could step up and knock down that three or take this shot or take that shot. He went to Golden State so he could play with shooters because he never played with any of them. And if you look at Oklahoma City roster and all that good stuff, the times that he was there, the only shooter that they really had at that particular time, and he came off the bench, was Daquan Cook. James hadn't become the shooter that he is now. He was a good player. Russ wasn't a great three-point shooter. I mean, he's still not a great three-point shooter, but he wasn't great then. And he's definitely not great now, but he wasn't great then. He improved over the years, but he wasn't great then. My brother Eric played with him. He wasn't a great three-point shooter. He was an assist guy. Had Nick Collison. He was just a role player. But if you look at that team, Serge Ibaka, he was a post-up player, big man. Kendrick Perkins played down in the post. You had guys that was not able to take shots and make shots like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and people with the Golden State Warriors. That's the reason why he left. So I feel like he had a lot of pressure on him in Oklahoma City, and now he's approaching it like, I'm going to just play basketball. I'm going to be great, and the championships will fall where they may. Some people might disagree with that. Some people might say it's a crazy way of thinking. But if that's the way he got to get through this type of pressure, then damn it, I say go for it. Whatever you got to do to psych yourself out. I psych myself out whenever I work out. If I run a suicide, I run the long one first. Because mentally, that helps me get through it. I know I'm going short after that. That's the way. So mentally, if you got to find a way to psych yourself out, then psych yourself out that way. And I think this is what he is doing here. He's making himself, to the point where I don't have all this pressure on me. I'm just going to go out here, have fun, play basketball, and be great. And the championship's going to fall where they may. That's the way I look at it. I could be wrong, but if it ain't broke for him, don't fix it because it's been working here the last few years. So we're going to keep moving right along, and we're going to go to the next one. We're going to go to our NBA Power Rankings. Our NBA Power Rankings, they change from week to week. This week, our NBA Power Rankings are as follow. We have our thing is just we going to. All right, so I kind of messed up on that, so it's not on here. It didn't say. All right, but my NBA Power Rankings are the Jazz. They're 40-13. They got 24 game home winning streak. And that's big for them because it's already tough to play in Utah. And if they get home court advantage, in the playoffs, it's going to be hard to win down there. I lived in Utah for a few minutes. You can walk up the stairs and walk back down and walk up the stairs and walk back down, and you'd be dead dumb tired. That air out there is so thin. And so them have a home court advantage that will be big. But they just playing real good basketball right now. They're one of the most complete teams if they're playing well together. They got Donovan Mitchell, who's been playing really, really, really good basketball. And so the Jazz are number one this week to me. The Suns are second in the West. They've been playing real good basketball. Chris Paul, I can't say enough about him. His DNA is all over that team. Devin Booker's been playing real good basketball. All the role players been playing real good, and Monty Williams is doing a fantastic job coaching his team. I can't say enough about Monty Williams. The adversity he's been through when he was here in Oklahoma City, wife getting killed, and having to stop coaching for a little bit to make sure his kids and stuff are straight, but then to come back and show that he still has it. He still has the fire to motivate a team and to coach a team and lead and be a leader amongst men is real big. So I like that with Monty Williams. TC, I say this all the time. Chris Paul should always be in MVP talks. Last year, I think that me personally, because people get the MVP misconstrued. All right, David, I see you. They get the MVP misconstrued. This is my thing with MVP. Everybody is basically a popularity contest. Or who has the best stats or whatever. Yeah, some players gonna have better stats than other players, but MVP says most valuable player. And I've expressed this one time before. What Chris Paul did at Oklahoma City, you could have took Antetokounmpo off of the Bucks, and they still would have been a formidable team. You could have took LeBron off of the Lakers, and they would have just been the Pelicans at the 7th or 8th seed. So, they still would have made the playoffs. You could have took James off of Houston, and they still had Russ, and they would have been one of the top 8 teams in the West. But if you took Chris Paul off that Oklahoma City team last year, they would have been dead in the water. They would have been one of the worst teams in the NBA, period. Same thing with, the Suns this year. Last year, they was riding high off of that, off the bubble. They went undefeated in the bubble. They didn't make the playoffs, but they were riding high off that. But this is a different year. Chris Paul has come in and put his DNA all over that team. He's took pressure off Devin Booker. I just think his name should be in there. He's just not the flashy player as the LeBrons, as the James. He does everything, the old school way. And that's what keeps him out of the MVP conversation. But we're gonna keep going. I got off on a whole nother spiel. Then we have the Nets. James and Kyrie has been out. Kyrie out for personal reasons. James out for the hamstring. KD is limited. They lost to the Lakers, so they dropped down. You got to penalize them for losing the game. But when all three of them come back, I guarantee they'd be in the power rankings. They'd be back to number one easily. Then you have the 76ers. 76ers at 4, but they got a bunch of big games this week. First, they play the Nets on Wednesday. That could have whoever's going to be first in the East. So this should be a big week for the Nets. For the 76ers and the Nets. And, if James them come back and all that good stuff. So, we're going to see what's going to happen with them in that game against the 76ers. And then we have the Clippers. The Clippers beat the Trailblazers, the Suns, the Rockets, and the Pistons last week. Patrick Beverley out, Serge Ibaka not traveling with back injuries or whatever, and Patrick Beverley going to be out for a little bit, which I think they can survive without Patrick Beverley because all he does is just bring a different attitude to the team, because he's not really the point guard that they need and, none of that stuff. So I think they can survive without him because they traded and got Rondo. Rondo is going to be the key to them being better. So we're going to see what's going to happen. If Rondo can get Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to play good basketball and listen to him and get them in the right spots, they could really make some noise in the West because it's not a foregone conclusion that if LeBron and AD comes back, that they're going to just definitely win the West and go on to the NBA championship to play against the Nets. I don't think it's just a given for either one of those teams just to make it simply because, one, it's a shortened season. It's a quick season, a quick turnaround. You got a lot of injuries, and it's a lot of good teams in the NBA. So we'll see what happens there. That's my NBA power rankings, and that's it in a nutshell. And so the last thing that I want to talk about in my final word, and my final word is success. A lot of people consider their success based off somebody else's success. And I don't agree with that, simply because of this right here. My success is not determined by my brother's success. My brother played professional basketball for how many years? He played for about 7, 8 years or something like professional basketball. And that's something that he wanted to do. I didn't want to play professional basketball. So a lot of people feel like him playing professionally, that makes him more successful. No, it doesn't make him more successful because somebody else chooses a different path. And I think that we need to start teaching our kids this, that, you could just be successful in life. And somebody going to the pros versus you having a career or a business doesn't make them more successful than you. Because at the end of the day, people see professional athletes and they get paid a bunch of money. Yes, it sounds like a bunch of money, but at the end of the day, they're getting all their money before the age of 40. And if you live a long, prosperous life, you got to manage that money until you're 70 or 80 years old. That's another 30 years that you don't have paychecks coming in, but you got all that money in there. And at the end of the day, if you got money coming in, you got money leaving out, nothing coming in, that bank account shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So they just getting all that money up front. So I wish we would stop the narrative of, TC, we have to make our own story. You're right. I use myself for an example. I could talk about myself because I'm myself, and this is my show. My brother played professional basketball. He played Oklahoma City. He was drafted by the Utah Jazz, got traded to Oklahoma City Thunder. He played with the Portland Trail Blazers, Philadelphia 76ers, played with the Washington Wizards. Then he played with a couple of teams overseas. Does that make him more successful than me? No, because I don't compete with my brother. My brother don't compete with me. I have my own businesses. Does that make me more successful than him? No, it doesn't. We all have to choose our own path. And sports is not always the path that everybody needs to take. I tell my sons all the time, I have one that love to play sports. The other one love to play sports, but he's more into computers and his books. And I tell him all the time, you don't have to follow in everybody else's footsteps. You make your own path. You blaze your own trail. If sports is not the way you want to go, then don't go that way. I got a brother that got a full scholarship to go to North Carolina State, and he got scholarships all over the place. And he's doing great working in pharmaceuticals and all that good stuff. Very successful. He went a totally different path. So I think we should stop with the narrative of trying to make our kids feel like, or people feel like, success is predicated off somebody else. What you do and how you're successful is based on you and yourself. If you feel good at what you're doing and the road that you're taking and the things that you've accomplished, then that makes you successful. Just because somebody else took a different way or make just a little bit more money or a whole lot more money doesn't make them more successful than you. It doesn't. It doesn't at all. Because, money is not the thing that makes you successful. It's really not. It's really because money can come and go. It's what you have up here and what you have right here that, can change things around. Because I tell everybody, you play sports, you are one injury away from not having anything. So you got to be able to fall back on something. So let's stop with the narrative thinking that, my child got to do this, my child got to do that, or they, instill it in them. Let your kids pick their own way. Because if you're trying to push them to be the next LeBron, the next Michael Jordan, the next Kevin Durant, the next Steph Curry, then it's really not going. It's not going to benefit them all, because they're doing it because you want to do it. Let them do it because they want to do it. But also teach them that, be real with them and tell them straight up, like, you can go to college and you can want to play professionally, but less than 1% of all college athletes go to the NBA. So let's keep it real with them. Keep it straight up with them. Make them understand that this is not a guarantee. Because if you teach them to hope for the best, but kind of expect the worst, sometimes that's a good way to look at, college basketball going to the pros. Because sometimes you just got to be more lucky than good. I tell people that all the time. My brother Eric was lucky. He was good, but he was lucky. I got a cousin, Terrell McIntyre. He was good, but he was unlucky. He played in a different era. He played in a different time. Terrell could have easily played in the NBA, in my personal opinion, but he was short, and it was a big man's league. They had started changing, having guards 6'6", 6'7", all that good stuff. That's what your starting guards were. He was 5'10". Now, if he played in this era now, he'd be good. He'd be just fine. Wouldn't have no problems. But I think we just need to stop with the narrative that somebody else's success is better than your success. What I do with my life and how I blaze my own trail, as long as I'm happy with myself, that I feel like I'm successful. Do I want to get better? Do I want to make things better for myself? Yes. But sports doesn't have to be the way. So I think we should stop getting our kids and having our kids thinking that success is strictly sports. Because at some point in time, sports is not going to always be there. So again, I want to tell everybody, I really appreciate you guys checking it out. I want to thank anybody who participated, anybody who checked me out, anybody who just came on and just browsed for a second. I have started, my Twitter and all that good stuff. So I'm going to start posting these on Twitter and my YouTube page. My Twitter is talks_this. So if any of you on Twitter, I'll post it on my page and all that good stuff. You guys go check it out. Follow me, all that good stuff. Neil, before I finish, I see you say I agree. He should have been an NBA player. He got the job done. He sure did. See, it's a lot of people that see things like that. But anybody who, Janet, before I finish, yes, he made it great overseas. He did. But a lot of people might think that, him playing overseas and not playing in the NBA, that somebody's more successful than him. No, that's a prime example. If I can't make it to the league, I go overseas, I'll be a star. I win championships. But that, me not playing the league doesn't make me not successful. So, had a great career. But anybody who checked me out again, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you checking me out. I know sometimes I could be a little long-winded, but I try to keep everything up on the hour. I try to keep everything opinionated and just based off my opinion. And if anybody, say anything, we can agree to disagree. But keep checking me out. Share the page. Tell everybody else to check me out. I'm on Mondays at 7:30 Central Standard Time, 8:30 Eastern, live here on Facebook. This Brother Talks. Signing off. I appreciate you guys checking out. Until next Monday, we'll see you.